So this whole song was written out of a feeling rather than a specific circumstance or situation. And that's sort of why a lot of what I've spoken about has been perhaps a little bit on the vague side, and that's mostly just because I want people to be able to take what they need from it. And I think that's kind of one of the beautiful things about music when we interpret it without having any context as we sort of project our own thoughts and ideas and relate it to what's going on in our own lives. But I think that general premise of, we often make choices based on what we know and what's comfortable and what feels safe, even if they're not necessarily the best things for us. And I think that's something that I've certainly gone through and felt, many times over the years in different ways. And I, as much as I think when I was writing it, it was specifically, in my head, the song came from a very visual place in my head. It definitely was about a relationship, like an intimate relationship. The more that I was sort of refining it and refining those lyrics, I wanted to make sure that it could relate to other things, whether it's our vices or, historical, like quote unquote bad patterns, and sort of leaving that open a little bit and coming from that place of like, how does the music hit? Like the songs I love the most are the ones that hit me in the gut, like just a gut punch right off the bat before I've even been able to truly absorb the lyrics. So it was an interesting balance, but I have to say it came a little bit more naturally and quicker than I would have expected going into it. And I think that's because it came from a very physical place.
If I leave or I try, but I can't say goodbye, will I fall back into you? Fall back into you. If I'm here and I cry, will you sleep by my side? Let me fall back into you. Fall back into you.
I'm really excited to talk to you, and I'll tell you why. Just like I do with all of the artists I talk to, I try to find like something really fascinating and interesting about their journey so far. And for you, I think it's just how many places that you've lived, and I'm very I'm very excited to see how that factors into essentially your story and what you do now. But I will officially welcome you, Niki Kennedy, to Pop Up Conversations. We're here in Toronto, and we talk to artists across the country about their musical journey and everything they're doing in the moment. So, thank you so much for your time, Niki.
Oh my goodness, thank you for having me. It's such a pleasure to be able to chat with you.
Awesome. Awesome. Okay, so let me begin. Where I really want to start is that, okay, I read that you were born in New Zealand, and at the age of 16, you moved to Toronto. That's where we pick up from your story that you came over to Toronto to study at Randolph's College for Performing Arts, and then now you self-describe as a Vancouver-based artist. Just personally, when I hear a story like that, I just get really excited because, I think location is tied to experience. So there's a ton of experiences tied to every place that you have lived. But before we pick up to where you left New Zealand, I just want you to give me a snapshot of your childhood itself. I wanna figure out how music started that was so powerful that you had to live to come study here in Canada.
Yeah, so born and raised in New Zealand, very proud Kiwi. Um,
Okay.
but I grew up in a very multicultural family, and I have sort of had these like two avenues into music, which have only really like come to light when I've really thought about it in the last few years, like having to talk and reflect on my story. And
Okay.
one of those avenues was through my grandparents. My grandma would take me to church and was always singing, and it was never in English, so I don't even think I really like fully understood the depth and breadth of it. I just loved to sing so much, and
Okay.
I was the grandchild that was excited to go because for me, I was like, I get to sing with everybody. Like this is amazing. And my grandfather had a piano that he would sit with me, and I would always like play. I'll pull my hands up. I would play like this even as a toddler,
Okay.
which like for most children, you start by like just plunking, but it was very like natural for me to sort of mimic what he was doing. And then the flip
Uh-huh.
side of that is my parents are just music lovers and appreciators. So music was always on in our household. My dad would dance around the living room with me, and my mom would like be singing in the car. It was just like this, even though we didn't have a musical family in the traditional sense, music was everywhere, and it was just something that always, I think, brought me a lot of joy. And so when I
Mhm.
started school, it was just natural, like go sing in the choir because like away, like more opportunities to sing with people. And then I fortunate enough to be able to start the keyboard lessons when I was in primary school, and like any opportunity that I had to connect with people and I guess myself like through music I took. So orchestra, instrumental, plays, musicals, like, and it just evolved over time into something that like I couldn't like what else was I gonna do? Nothing brought me that kind of joy, like it just made sense.
Wow, that's fascinating. So most of the time I talk to artists, it's almost kind of like a similar story. Most people are not from a traditional music family where you have both parents involved in music, but somehow music tend to be around and you just gravitate to it. So I guess the question is, so at 16, you take this major decision to actually switch countries, which is a big move for anybody to do. I want to what got you to that point? What was so strong and motivating that you could take that kind of decision?
I honestly think that I I think I was a little bit more fearless than I probably am now. Like, I think there's that like teenage, like sort of like reckless abandon that comes with just like, when you don't have responsibility yet or you don't have accountability or consequences. And so like it's
Uh-huh.
very like, tunnel vision, like I want to perform. Like that's all I wanted to do. And I was already working in New Zealand, and doing high school and doing shows and even I had a teaching job, like teaching music, and I was working for New Zealand Opera on the other side, the production side, and I was doing all these things. It was my world anyway, so I just
Mhm.
had this like laser focus that I was just gonna make my dreams come true. But of
Wow.
course, I was a teenager, so it was just the logical side doesn't really kick in right away. So it was a no-brainer for me, and thankfully my parents are just the kindest, most supportive people, and they let me go. They let me move across the world by myself.
Wow.
No, that's great because now we see your story forming, right? And I think it's amazing to also have that kind of supportive family and background, especially
Oh,
when
when
we
we
when we're
when we're
chasing.
chasing.
Yes, absolutely. Okay, so tell me about the experience of coming here and actually studying in the performing arts school. Was it all that you had hoped for? Did your dream seem any closer at that point?
That's a great question, but it's funny looking back now and looking at where I'm at now versus, like where I thought I was gonna be. I had big dreams. Um, So what I think what I wasn't prepared for when I moved, and again, like we're talking age and maturity, but also, this is pre-smartphone technology, so access to information was a little bit different when I originally moved, and I think the shock of moving to Canada was greater than I anticipated. Culturally, food, the weather, I'd never seen snow. And I arrived in a snowstorm, and I found out very quickly I do not like the cold. Like, hence now I live in Vancouver. But, like,
You're not alone. Even the people who have lived here for all their lives, they don't like it.
yeah, it's like, it's one of those things that you don't think about how your environment plays into how you're doing. especially at that age. And it was tough. College is hard anyway, but I was 16. I just moved across the country by myself, and I was in a brand new country. And even though I had a very thick accent that nobody could understand ever, hence why now I speak with a North American accent. But, like I had this thick accent. I didn't like the colloquialisms. I didn't know what Q-tips were because everybody like talks about things by their brand name, not by what they actually are. It was very overwhelming. So, and then school was really intense on top of that. And it was a big change. It was a reality check. It was, all of those things. And I think performing programs specifically, and I think they are evolving now, but I think there is a lot of that mentality. You got to break you down to build you back up kind of thing. And it was hard emotionally, physically, all of that. And I do think it definitely prepared me for a career in the music industry. Just like give the ego a good little beating there. But it was really, really tough. And the program I did was like a non-stop program, so no breaks, no summer off. Like it wasn't a university type structure. It was just like full blown. And I think it taught me how to work really hard, and the value of being prepared, and making sure those skills are always intact and we're always learning and growing, and those are things that I've taken away and can reflect on now and say, like that's what that taught me. But I certainly thought that I would have traveled the entire world and, achieved the greatest things by, 1 year out of college. And I can guarantee you that didn't happen. But, reality sort of plays in. And when you're young, you don't always factor in things like life and like the other goals outside of your career and work, and things that sort of come to light as you grow. And it's a wonderful foundation, and it's a huge part of my story and journey. But yeah, I'm definitely not where I thought I would be when I was 16 and moved.
Got you, got you. But it's a journey though, so we're still on that train, right? So
100%
I do.
evolving,
I do
hopefully
hear
for
you.
the better.
Absolutely, absolutely. Otherwise, I wouldn't be having this conversation with you. So you're definitely on the right track. I think we're going to get to the music a bit later in this conversation. But of course, your talent at this point, not just because of what I have to say, but I've read a ton of stuff about you, and for all of the reviews that you've gotten, it does point to the right direction. So the journey still continues, and I'm really excited to be part of it at this point, to talk to you about it and all that you have accomplished so far. At what point did you decide to move to Vancouver? And I ask all these questions about location, just like I said, because I want to know how all of this intersects with the music that you now create. It may not be intentional, but I think just unconsciously, it does seep into your art. But at what point did you say, "Hey, I'm done with the East. I'm done with Toronto. I'm going to Vancouver."
Yeah, so I actually didn't move straight to Vancouver, just to add to the map that we can pinpoint our locations for. I actually moved to Kelowna in the Okanagan, and that happened. Gosh, I guess it's been 5 years now, which is
Okay.
kind of wild to say.
Okay.
But yeah, it got to a point where it just didn't make sense anymore. And
Mhm.
I was, funnily enough, not creating music the way that
Mhm.
I would have liked to have. I was working, but also working in cover bands and doing gig related stuff, but then like bartending every other night. And I was trying to make it work, and I felt like the creative soul had been sucked out of me a little bit. And I'm a big, advocate for, if something needs to change, then change it. And one of the biggest things for me was, I think I was missing that nature, that environment that had always grounded me growing up. And that is one of the great fortunes and privileges of growing up on a beautiful island. Like, you're surrounded by beauty all the time. And I think
Yeah.
we take for granted things like water and, mountains and how that can affect us. And
Yeah.
so sort of went in search of that. And it
Mhm.
started with a, who gets the most like sunshine hours in Canada kind of like, how can we escape the cold? You can tell this decision was made in the middle of winter. So I started in the Okanagan, and what's beautiful about that is I hadn't released any of my own music
Hmm.
prior to moving to BC. And then I
Wow.
moved to BC, and suddenly it was like, hey, maybe I don't have to just work on other people's projects, which I love doing. And I love, I love being immersed in music and creative anything. Like
Hmm.
I'm always down, for anything that I can dip my
Yeah.
toes into. But I started to consider whether my own stories and my own voice was something that maybe people would be interested in hearing.
Hmm.
And the opportunity to be able to explore that, and it was definitely entirely a result of the switch in environment, the change in environment.
Wow. Wow.
Because I don't
Wow.
think that would have happened in Toronto. Because, life, you get caught up in we get into these patterns and routines, and obviously I recently wrote about that, but we get into our way of doing things, and it's hard to switch that up or get out of it or just completely change directions. Whereas when you have a complete environment change, I sort of, you know, what else are you gonna do? That now's the time. Don't know
Yeah.
anybody. Don't, like that sort of thing. And then a couple years ago, moved to Vancouver,
Hmm.
which has been interesting because obviously most of the time I've lived in back in a big city, it's been restricted or locked down. So
Uh-huh.
it's an interesting thing to be, yeah, back in a big city, but sort of not have those big city luxuries that we sort of equate with living in
Uh-huh.
Vancouver or Toronto, Montreal. But it has been incredible to be back on the ocean, and that is something that like I feel like I never knew that I missed for my time living in Toronto, and now it's like just the smell, the water. I can drive and be at the beach in not too long of a time. So that sort of stuff I think has really shaped the way that I approach my sound, my music, everything,
Hmm.
and it's all to do with environment. So I love that you jumped right into like we need to talk about these places that you've been and the moves and all of that because without knowing it and until you said it, I was like, yeah, like I guess like where I have lived has completely shaped who I am
Yeah.
as an artist and the music I create.
Yeah. Wow. That's just a remarkable story. I think just a follow up comment about what you said about location being kind of tied with vocation. I think it's just remarkable the way that you said it and how it has played out in your life. I have this conversation with people all the time that you cannot extricate yourself from the place that you are, and I it's remarkable that your music started to in full effect after you left what might be considered as all the craziness and went to BC and found yourself again and found your sound. And I think that's just I think that's remarkable. It's something that people should key into and listen to and try to relate to their lives as well. So thank you so much for taking us through that journey. Um,
Thank you
and then
for
you put out
leading
new
me there.
music. No worries at all. But you put out new music in 2018. We're gonna get to fall back into you, but I've listened to much of your earlier stuff as well. But I wanna get the sense of how that process started to evolve and who you got to work with and how you have honed in on the sound that you now have for this current project that we're gonna talk about in a bit.
Yeah, so my first project, The Weather Up Here, was truly made possible by the very generous support of Creative BC and the province of British Columbia, which is a beautiful thing given that, I moved and then suddenly found support, like all of the things. It's like, oh, wow, the universe is pointing all, signs to that this is the right thing to do. So the beauty of that is it allowed me to work with Tom Dobransky at Monarch Studios in Vancouver.
Okay.
And it allowed me to hire musicians, which all independent artists can attest to like how much of a privilege that is. So and work in this space that was just stunning. Like I got to play a grand piano, like a Yamaha C9, like just dream the stuff that dreams are made of, like just like, oh my goodness. And what was nice about that process is I came to Tom with these 5 songs, and he didn't try to change my vision. He didn't try to change me or my sound. He really like looked at it all and said, how can we elevate this and turn this into a record? And I have written songs my entire life. Like that has been something that I've always done without actively thinking of it as like songwriting necessarily, it's always been something that's just been very natural to me. So to suddenly have to be like, how do I choose 5 songs? How do I, like, what goes into a record? Like, it's a totally different thing, right? So I was very grateful to have that guidance and that sort of encouragement for me to trust a little bit of my own, sense of self and vision, also being super green and, first time out trying to release something to the world. But I think what has happened over the last couple of years is that I've started to trust myself more. I've started to own myself and my space and what I may or may not bring to the table. And with that has allowed me to evolve that sound and to take a little bit more risk, or to have genres influence me in ways that I might have been too scared to approach before, because we all kind of think that we're supposed to be in a box, and we all care what other people think, or what we think we do, what we think other people want from us. And I definitely was in that space, and not to say that I'm completely out of it, but I'm working on it. I'm working on growing toward really just trusting myself and owning what I bring to the table.
Awesome. So I'll tell you what, I listened to Fall Back Into You first when I started to research about you for this conversation. So I listened to that first a couple of days. I was getting into it. I thought I knew the kind of artist you were. And then I go back to listen to The Last Night Dancing With You, and it was such a totally different sound. And I'm like, okay, this is really fascinating, because you do pull both of them off easily. The last night, which I want us to talk about before we come to Dancing With You, is from what I hear, it almost has like a retro type of vibe, what you would hear from the early 90s, and it just has this kind of drums that are similar to sounds that probably a Janet Jackson would do, or something
like that.
Oh my
goodness, yes. I love that you said that.
So I'm listening to that. I'm like, how does she go from this to the ballad, which is so beautiful, and she's able to rock both of them? So I know this isn't these are just 2 singles right now, but tell me about the writing process of The Last Night Dancing With You and how that came about, and then we will come to what we're here for, the really great big ballad with your mighty voice and stuff like that.
So last March I was in Nashville on a writing camp, and it was amazing. I was in the woods. It was all like, just like cloud 9. It was incredible. I was working with incredible artists and writers and all that kind of stuff. And that was right at the beginning of March. And of course, the world changed very quickly. And I had to change my flight back. I had to come back early. And once I came back, it was like coming through an apocalypse, like the things that movies are made of and based on. And when I came back, I kept getting phone calls, one after the other. Gig canceled, show canceled, all of these things. And I was like, okay, no problem. Like, just make it through, rock it through. And I think like most artists, when these things happen, these pivotal things in life that we can't can write about them. And I was doing a lot of writing, a significant amount of writing. And I was sad and heartbroken, and the world felt very heavy. And a lot of what I was writing was dark and, it had a lot of weight to it. And one day I sort of said, okay, like I have to pull myself out of this because this is a dangerous slippery slope I'm going down, and I need to make myself feel better. So I decided to write a song to make myself feel better. And I was like, okay, so if the world's ending, like if we're gonna call it what it is, if the world's ending, if it's the last night of the world, then how would I choose to spend it? And for me, that's just dancing my face off in the living room with the people I love. Like I try to do this on a regular basis. And I tried to think about the kinds of music that make me feel good. Like physically, even if I'm having the worst day, like what are the songs that, or the artists that just like give me that, it's like, oh, you can pull me out of it no matter what. And I tried to write a song like that. And while it was very pandemic specific, I like to think that it stands on its own in the sense that life is short and we don't know what's going to happen. So those moments are so crucial, and we have to be present. And like if we were going to go tomorrow, then like what would we do today? And I think that little reminder in such a bleak outlook right now has certainly got me through. And I really hope that other people have been able to take a little bit of that away too, and feel good or hopeful or grateful.
Is the last night? Don't know if we'll see morning. Wouldn't feel right if it's not your hand. I'm holding close to me tight. Even if the world is ending, if it's the last night, I wanna spend it dancing with you. I wanna spend it dancing with you.
I love that. I also love the song. Like I said, it's it put me in this very nostalgic mood, and I'm like, okay, when I had the conversation with you, I was gonna ask you about that, but so I also wanna thank. I think resilience has come forth, has been birthed a lot, especially in the arts community. I'm thanking artists every single time I get the opportunity for those people who had the courage and the strength, however little, to continue working through what we've been through and to keep on putting out music. I think it's commendable, and it shows resilience. And I think if people are able to put out this quality of music, haven't gone through what we have, just imagine all that we would do when all of this is over, just knowing the limitations of time and all that we've been through. So I think that's fantastic, and congratulations on that single.
Thank you so much. And I just further to that, like I think it is a testament to the arts as a whole, and that's something that I think we've seen throughout history, is that artists adapt, and it's not, I don't think it's something that is exclusive to the music industry. I think over time we've seen it evolve in all disciplines, but specifically in music over the last 20 years there's been a huge shift in landscape, and seems every couple of years there's a new development that wipes out what we know is the traditional means of the industry, streaming, digital, like all of that. And so I think that that's what makes art so beautiful, is its ability to come out of darkness and adapt and connect with people. And I think now more than ever, and I will say this always and probably for the rest of my life, art is so important. Music is so important. And we can't lose sight of that in an age where consumption's at an all-time high, but perceived value is probably at an all-time low. So I feel like it's something that I will spend the rest of my life advocating, is how important it is for people and community.
I couldn't agree more. I am 100% in agreement with you on that one. Okay, so I'm going to read you something. You say, "Fall back into you," which is the which is the
Like, oh, what did
single.
I say?
No,
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 no.
no.
It's all good, I promise. But you call "Fall Back Into You" the song that best represents you from your entire catalog. I found that very remarkable. So I was going to ask you if you could explain to us what that means.
Yeah, it's certainly, oh yeah, it's certainly the one I'm most proud of, that's for sure. Um, so I think I I I always say that I'm a sucker for the sad. Like, give me a sad emotional ballad and I am in heaven. Like, that is what I just love. Like, that is like I'll be the first one on a dance floor always, but like I give me tears and I'm in, you know.
Why though? Why? Can I just ask why?
Why?
Yeah, well, because okay, so I love this thing, this quote, I guess, but like I read somewhere that when you listen to sad songs when you're sad, it makes you feel better. And I could be wrong, but I believe there's actually some kind of like science behind that.
Okay.
Don't quote me because I'm obviously not a scientist and artists shouldn't be quoted for science things, but like that resonated with me so much because I think so much like of my life, I've always turned to music when things hurt and are hard and when the world is too much for me. The first thing I do is turn to music. And I love it. Like, I love just the fact that one song, one note, one anything can just make us feel a certain way and bring back a memory or associate something. And I just, when I was talking about that physical reaction, like that for me, that the only thing that does that is music. So I think that I have a special place for especially emotional ballads and pop songs because that's a lot of when I was a kid, I would sing along to these big sad ballads, 90s divas, you know, and I even though I hadn't gone through these, you know, massive dramatic breakup romantic relationships, you know, when I'm 6 years old or whatever, you know, for whatever reason, it made me feel so greatly. And that I think that's a feeling that I don't want to say been chasing because I feel like it's not even chasing, embracing my whole life since. So I definitely feel like ballads are my thing. On a very personal level, I just love them. I
Mhm.
really, really do. Um, so that's the ballad side. From the song as a whole, I think um, even though it has a specific sound
Yeah.
and might come across as a certain genre to a listener on a first pass, it has a significant amount of influence that I don't think is readily apparent that I'm super proud of. Like some of the soundscaping elements and the layering and things like that that are huge influences from genres that have nothing to do with pop.
Uh-huh.
And like
Uh-huh.
it gave me the freedom and the ability to sort of, you know, say like, I'm gonna listen to a Nine Inch Nails record and like really break down like where sounds come in and out and how they allow a visual concept to be translated to like a
Mhm.
sonic representation of that. And um, I think with that freedom and that creativity is also the flip side of just like how much work went into getting it to the place it is now. So like the layering of the vocals, the choir, you know, I'm an
Yeah.
independent artist. I cannot afford to pay a choir as much as I would love to. You know, that's just like
Uh-huh.
completely off the
Uh-huh.
table. And also in the middle of a pandemic when, you know, we have restrictions, it just wasn't a viable thing. But the vision was there and we wanted to make it happen. So guess who just recorded themselves like 50 times? And poor
Yeah,
Shane sent
I've
it to
read
Shane
that.
and
Yeah.
said, you know, thank you. You're the best.
That's
So I
incredible.
think just
That's
that kind
incredible.
of like, you know, everything was recorded at home for both Fall Back Into You and the last night. Like I haven't met Shane in person, and Shane, just for everybody that's watching, is uh, the producer of both records and is just this wonderful human who takes all what you're seeing, like a little bit of it here, but like all of the crazy wires in my brain, and makes it, beautiful. It
And
delivers
just
it in a nice way.
yeah.
and just fleshes them out. So again, I think your talent cannot be understated. I think a lot of people have commented on that, and I have seen reason why. I think you have a remarkable voice. You talk about layering almost 50 takes of your voice to create a choir, and when I read that, it was almost similar to what I think when Sam Smith came out with "Stay With Me," he also did something similar with all you heard, all the backing vocals that seemed like a choir was all Sam Smith, and he recorded like an insane amount of vocals to get that effect and all of that. And you mentioned when the vision is there, the ability to execute and chase on that, and not allowing anything to come between you and what you wanna. And I also think that's a very, very valid point to take note of for people who are gonna watch this as well, much later. So, congratulations on that. There's a portion of the song where I think it goes quiet for a bit, and then the drums come in. I don't know if, the drums come in. It reminds me of "In the Air." Is that Phil Collins?
Oh, Phil Collins.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And Phil Collins has "I Can Feel It Coming." Anyways, there's a huge big drum in that as well, and it
I'm a
reminds
huge
me.
fan of, yeah. So it's funny because drums are actually the one instrument that I do not play. But I'm probably the pickiest about, because for whatever reason, I just like, I love, love drums. And I think they can be one of the most impactful things, especially in fills and bringing into new sections. And I am so detail oriented with what I want to hear. And I'm sure sometimes people wish that I could just play them or program them properly so that I don't have to go back and forth. But the drums are always something that I put a lot of attention to. So I appreciate that you noticed.
Maybe it all makes sense this time. You can't just say we're doing fine when it feels like you're full steam ahead, and I'm at least 20 steps behind. So breathe with me. If I leave or I try, but I can't say goodbye, will I fall back into you? Oh, back in you. If I'm here and I cry, will you sleep by my side? Let me fall back into you. Oh, back into you. Let's say
No, it's a really great single. About the lyric itself, though, could you just run us through what it means? And I know you said you would love for people to go ahead and interpret it the way they want, but when you were writing, what did you want to capture?
So this whole song was written out of a feeling rather than a specific circumstance or situation. And that's sort of why a lot of what I've spoken about has been perhaps a little bit on the vague side, and that's mostly just because I want people to be able to take what they need from it. And I think that's kind of one of the beautiful things about music, when we interpret it without having any context, as we sort of project our own thoughts and ideas and relate it to what's going on in our own lives. But I think that general premise of, we often make choices based on what we know and what's comfortable and what feels safe, even if they're not necessarily the best things for us. And I think that's something that I've certainly gone through and felt, many times over the years in different ways. And I as much as I think when I was writing it, it was specifically, in my head, the song came from a very visual place in my head. Um, it definitely was about a relationship, like an intimate relationship. The more that I was sort of refining it and refining those lyrics, I wanted to make sure that it could relate to other things, whether it's our vices or um, historical, like quote unquote bad patterns, and sort of leaving that open a little bit and coming from that place of like, how does the music hit? Like the songs I love the most are the ones that hit me in the gut, like just a gut punch right off the bat before I've even been able to truly absorb the lyrics. So it was an interesting balance, but I have to say it came a little bit more naturally and quicker than I would have expected going into it. And I think that's because it came from a very physical place.
Awesome. Well, like I said, there's just so much in the song I could pick apart so we could talk on, but there's never enough time in this
I
format here
know.
to have a conversation. But I do love when you come into the chorus, how you there's falsetto there when you're going through it, and it's just really beautiful how you weave in and out of your falsetto, and you come back in, and I just it's just really really lovely. It's a great song. I want to say congratulations. It was released on August 4th.
Yeah.
Um, so congratulations. We're gonna point people to the song to go listen to it. I do love it, and we're fans of not only your music at this point, but of you. So congrats for making great music, Nikki.
Thank you. Oh my goodness, that's so kind. Thank you for saying that.
All right. I want to read you one more thing before I do let you go. But I understand that since all of this craziness started, you have performed over 300 virtual shows. You performed and licensed three original songs for a national campaign, originated a starring role in an audio adaptation of a new musical work, and released a new single. You all of this stuff going on, you've also made it as a participant in the Soken Foundation TD Incubator for Creative Entrepreneurship. How do you find the time to do all of this stuff? Like how do you accomplish all of this? What's going on here? Are you Superwoman?
I don't think I'm Superwoman, but to be perfectly fair, I don't have a sense of balance or boundaries at this point. I'm working on it. Might be a little bit of a workaholic, but um, I just love it so much. I love it so much. Like it's hard for me to find the personal time, but I work really hard, and I want to, and it's nobody's forcing me to, but this is my life, and this is who I am, and I want to be able to share that with people, and I don't feel like I am at a position in my life, nor do I want to ever say no to an opportunity that presents itself. So I've had a lot of privilege in the last year to be able to say yes to a lot of things, and the pandemic sort of made space for that too. So yeah, I'm just gonna keep saying yes and working as hard as I possibly can, and hope that maybe people will hear some of my stuff and connect with it, and maybe it'll make a little bit of an impact on their life.
Brilliant. I think that brings us full circle to what you said at the top of this conversation when you talked about work ethic being gotten from the college you came here initially to come attend. It's so important. I think people do not quite realize how hard people in the performing arts or performative arts they have to work. Like people don't realize just how much effort and time and skill and just blood, sweat, and tears, equity that you need to put into
Absolutely, because
career.
people see the final product, right? Like
Yeah,
that's
yeah,
usually what you see, and yeah, there's a whole whack load of work that goes into creating that final product.
yeah.
People don't quite see them. So I'm very thankful for how far that you've come. I know that there's a long ways to go. That your journey is only just beginning. Um, Congratulations on all that you've achieved so far, and especially for the Soken Foundation TD Incubator. I know that's a very that's a good you know, initiative and a program to be in. So congratulations on that front. Congratulations on the song as well. Like I said, we're going to point people there. I also would love for you to just tell us. I know you have two bodies of work currently, or rather, you had a body of work put out in 2018. But tell us where we can find all the stuff that you have going on, and if there's anything forthcoming.
Yeah, absolutely. So everyone can find me, well, all streaming services, obviously. My name's Niki Kennedy. And then on social media, I'm on all of the platforms, like all of them. Probably against my wishes for the most part. But so Niki Kennedy CA, and that's Nikki with one K. And then I have a website that sort of houses all of that.
Mm-hmm.
But what's next? I've got a new single coming down the pipeline. And when you made that Janet Jackson reference, the reason I freaked out a little bit is because the next one is very Janet inspired. We're talking
Oh,
like
look at
Rhythm
that.
Nation, Rhythm Nation era.
Oh,
Um,
iconic, classic. Yeah.
you did, which is so cool. But yeah, so I'm going back to some grooving, some dance floor kind of music for the next release. And yeah, I'm going to be paired with my mentor for the incubator release soon. So I'm just looking forward to growing, and I am currently performing 4 shows a week virtually on Volume, which has been incredible. And if anybody's interested in just connecting with people that love music and super awesome, awesome people from all around the world, then feel free to tune in and say hi and make a request. I'll learn anything.
Oh my God, I've thoroughly enjoyed myself talking to you.
Likewise,
It's
thank you for making space and time and being so generous with yourself and your questions. It's truly amazing. I'm very grateful.
Thank you for being an awesome guest. I love that you were open, and I do really think that you're super talented. Again, these are not my words. These are what people have said over the years. So what we're gonna do is that we're gonna keep watching you. We're gonna keep rooting for you. You're welcome to come back anytime, and whenever you have something to put out, we're gonna do our best to show it to our audience as best we can. We're very excited to share new music and to find great talent just like yourself across the country. It's remarkable how much talent we have here, and I think you fit right in that box. And we couldn't be more happy for all that you have going on. And we wish you massive success for the future, Nikki.
Thank you so much for your kindness. Thank you.
Awesome, awesome. I know this isn't the last time we're gonna talk, but
Absolutely not.
we've
Friends for
Uh,
life.
I'm gonna be looking out for your new record that's coming out whenever it does come out. But I thank you for your time, and have a great rest of your day. Okay.
You too. Take care. Thank you so, so much.